I'm told there's something about the formula of a cooked breakfast that appeals to the alpha male in all of us, particularly a Scotswoman's breakfast. I had been a Doctor Who fan since 1971, but a figure that I was more and more finely attuned to the theatre was Jeremy Brett. This duly served me rather well in his technique. The problem is, it is also furthered from a sociological point of view, as Doctor Who is really a product of its time, whereas Sherlock Holmes is eternally entrenched in literature. This is the most importantly fundamental part of the worldwide social consciousness. This last theory could be taken up a step further, as it might be prudent to examine the very nature of the science fiction program itself. Now, there's a lot of controversy in 2025 about the likelihood of the show continuing and whether it should be shelved or not. Now, I'm an ardent fan of the show, as I said.
And yet the most shunned and abhorred species in all history.
And I would desperately like to see it prolonged from one point of view. But the phenomenon is a product of its time, and it doesn't bleed into the external validity of the consciousness as it once did. I could start poking accusations at Russell T or Chibs at this point, or even Jodie Whittaker or Shooty G. As Davies himself put it in a rather atrocious attempt to justify his decisions. Time and society and taste has moved on.
He's a wheelchair user who is evil.
What would be the point in trying to argue with the agenda-ridden narcissist himself? But they are but small cogs in an incredibly large reality. The little BBC show was first broadcast in the early 60s, a time when it was needed to bridge the gap between the horrors of the last 15 years and the burgeoning future. Today, we have much more pressing issues at hand, and that can no longer be addressed by archaeology that went out of date 20 years ago. AI is deciphering ancient inscriptions the experts have struggled with for centuries, taking over our rights to independent thought and creativity at the same time. The HMSRC in England is taking over people's rights to secure their own finances. A far cry from the pastiche of the Sunmakers, for example, Doctor Who, which was like the Tom Baker era, and that was like the culmination of it, the height of its powers. All of this, coupled with Russia and the United States request emergency United Nations Security Council meeting in the light of civilians in Western Syria.
Nice. Amiable people.
Does Doctor Who manage to address any of these issues anymore? Could it even, if it wanted to? Back in the day, it was very successful in tackling such moral issues, so much so that when it came time for another social shift in the early 70s, the show managed to change format yet again to accommodate for their tonal changes and perspectives of the world. Striving into the 70s and 80s, it forged new understandings and bled into the issues that needed to be addressed, mainly because of its producers and directors, writers and stars. But all good things come to an end. And towards the late 80s, diversity into Europe and the political climate and economic strife had bent so much that the show no longer reflected the public need for stability. It just simply sat on our sets like the useless Monty Python penguin.
It's just gone 8 o'clock and time for the penguin on top of your television set to explode.
When it was eventually brought back in 2005, it was needed yet again. Social and political change was again rearing its ugly, and the show was called upon to do one last service for its country of origin. Today we find ourselves in yet another strata of strife, and this one is a lot more sensitive. Programs can no longer be ground crushing, but need to sit on a cloud of inclusionism. I ask you, inclusionism. I like it as much as the next Conservative, but that's the way that Gen Z seem to want it. Doctor Who is no longer valid. Fans of the show today need to understand that if you really love something, you want to let it go. I know it's tacky and it's old hat, but it is actually true. Some will probably go on watching it, both the casual normie and the diehard fans. Though I might warn you, I have been watching it for 54 years and I've grown up with it now. And I realise it's dead. Perhaps you might want to consider the reality that too. Doctor Who has a sell-by date, and that date is expired in 1988.
I just don't see why those two can't work things out.
I think the fact that one of the Doctor's most influential quotes about human beings being indomitable and Sherlock Holmes' outstanding being,
How often have I said to you, that once you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth.
says it all, really. The Doctor stands for the iconology of inclusionism, while Sherlock Holmes looks at things dispassionately. As is popularized in social motivation today. We are no longer a culture which in reality celebrates individualism, but a society where every man is for himself. We desperately push the agenda that we are inclusionists, but in reality, we are exclusionists in 2025. Hardly really as enlightened as we want ourselves to believe. It's all smoke and mirrors. As exemplified by the Human Rights Act of 1998. A year when politics and economics, together with social inclusion, all took the reins of the population's subservience. Now, what's interesting about this is that we all have that desire to aspire to someone else's standards and dreams to some degree, allowing such visions to live well beyond the years of the individual.
That is why I'm your king.
This is how legends and myths are born, and ultimately human aspirations are refurbished with new styles and new decor. Doctor Who was one such legend, together with its numerous contemporaries on TV at its height, but it has its sell-by date, despite the fact that colours and tones are developed within the race memory and psyche. Rainbows of art flourish. Ultimately, we worship our own creativity. No Doctor has ever had such an impact on worldwide consciousness, and never will. That's not to say that they were in any way bad actors. To the contrary, most of them were phenomenally good and aspirational. Despite this, coupled with the fact that literary achievements will always trump televisual ones.
£32 for a TV licence? It's a disgrace. It's far too low.
Russell T and his ilk have destroyed my any ability, for Doctor Who to reach such heights. Moreover, Holmes remains the epitome of a Scotswoman's breakfast.
I had noticed.
Give us a good clicking.
Shakanaka.